What would you say that is where somebody else just can't be with somebody else's greatness or their celebration?
Jealousy is actually an energy that I don't like to tolerate. If somebody allows that energy to grow in their life, they will become abusive, either passively, aggressively, or verbally, because it is actually a very low realm energy of no fault of their own because of the abuse or trauma that's happened to them. And so they kind of get stuck in that pattern. I believe in people's ability to change. They come to me and I'll point out their shadow if it needs to be pointed out. And I try and encourage self-compassion at the same time as that awareness so that they can receive that. And if they receive that awareness, we then have choice. What do you do with that? Do I shove that because it's more convenient, or am I actually really interested in being in a relationship dynamic, holding power rather than connection and love? That is choice.
Hi, Lee. Welcome to my
Hi.
podcast. Hiya, hiya. So, why don't you introduce yourself?
Great. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me on. My name's Lee Rourke. I am a transformational coach and I work mainly women, but anybody who's who's an overgiver, to break those patterns of overgiving. But having said that, I've pretty much worked with everybody over the last 20 years in terms of coaching. I've done business coaching and I still do what I call spirit of business coaching. So we look at this actual spirit of the business. And so we just do an intensive 5 sessions on that. And because a business has an energy as well. So I guess I'm going to sound a little bit contradictory here because I have this background as a mental health occupational therapist, which is really solidly based in kind of evidence-based practice and all of that sort of thing. But I never fit that mold. So I went and studied all sorts of things from kinesiology to just all sorts, NLP, you name it. I've done heaps of stuff around trauma as well. So on that more solid side. But then really how I work is with energy. I read energy. So for me, it's everything is energy, absolutely everything. So I'm looking at the energy flows people get caught in and the false beliefs they might have that come up as a result of that and the origins of that. So, maybe that came from an event in childhood or wherever it comes from. And we look at releasing that because, my passion is helping people to live in a life that's more true to themselves. And that's where the overgiving patterns come in, is that I find I get this happened organically. I got these really lovely clients that tend to be overworkers, overfunctioners, overgivers, people pleasers, perfectionists. And it all comes from that same origin and quite often actually from trauma too. So that's in a nutshell what I do. I work in a coaching one-to-one. I do small groups. And yeah, I'm about to put out a program soon for overgivers when I get the videos fully done, just to make a cheap, accessible program for people because I just want this information to be a bit broader understood. So yeah,
Ah,
that's
wow.
me.
I love every single word in that, including the past that you've come from, like that rigid, like this like evidence-based, and then
Yes.
seeing that, no, wait, that's me and it isn't me. Let's look at some other things like, okay, NLP and energy work, and then
Well, I
knowing.
started that while I was studying. I was doing things like Reiki. It just never fit. But when I say evidence based, like I do believe even my energy work is evidence based, but it's just based on a different type of evidence.
Totally, totally. And it's results based, right? So like
Yes,
you
yes.
feel it and you see
Outcome
the
based. Yeah.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because I think that's such a powerful credential when it comes to when your clients have a breakthrough and you have that reassurance of like, no, I'm actually on the right path here. Like
Yes.
I might not have, or it might not be like mainstream approved, but then
Yeah.
deep down, I know this person's having a breakthrough, like a chronic overgiver, like being able to draw whatever boundaries or limitations on their giving, is life changing for
It's
someone, right?
life changing. Yeah, it is. Because people don't realize every time they say yes when their truth is actually no, they're giving up something that is important to them to create space for something that's not. So whether that's passions, purpose, energy, vibrancy, health, love of self, there can be so much lost in this patterning, which the patterning exists because the person wants to be loved or worthy or good enough or
Yeah,
whatever
totally.
their origin is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you spoke to that just then, like the core injuries, right? There's always a
Yes.
piece of it. I just want to be loved. I just want to be felt. I want
Yeah.
to feel feel a certain sensation in my body. So like the past is where someone's needed to overgive or give beyond what their no was in order to receive some kind of affection, attention, or something.
Yes. Or just to not fear being attacked or rejected or
Yeah.
abandoned, which all of these very primal kind of fears that come from sometimes our survival network, but also sometimes from experience. As a child, you don't have the defense or the ability to set boundaries with someone bigger and more powerful than you. So something that starts as a survival strategy then becomes a behavioral pattern, like where this is just the way we do things. And I'm a reformed overgiver in that sense, well, a lot of therapists are, or coaches or counselors, a lot of them are, because, it's like, well, we care about people and sometimes that's part of our trauma patterning, but also sometimes it's just part of who we are. And in our caring about people, we can start to mesh with their issues and merge with what their needs rather than our own. And you would see that all the time in relationship coaching, I'm sure.
Totally. And then for me, being aware of like, when am I getting enmeshed with this client? Am I distant? I need to distance myself. I need to set limits on how many times they call me or send me messages and being able to create that distance.
Yeah, and those boundaries are definitely part of any coach or therapist's journey, absolutely, or anybody in business, really. Like, how much do I give to my clients and where are my boundaries? And that's just a process of getting clear on that and loving yourself. And it's a journey. It's not like suddenly overnight we fully release a lot of these patterns.
Totally.
But it's a journey. But there is a tipping point, I find, and it's really like a choice decision. And that's the point I'm hoping to get my clients to, that choice point where they're starting to put their needs first, and rather than being externally validating themselves, like validated by the opinions of others, they're validating themselves. They're internally validated. So that's the tipping point, I think, where you start to be able to be self-aware and go, oh, I actually said yes when I meant no, or actually I need more boundary there. It's still going to happen, but to have that skill without all of the fear around what that would mean, even if there's a tentative anxiety around what that might mean, I might lose a client, I might lose a friend, but or I might, my partner might get upset, might create disconnection here, but this is important to me, I'm willing to do that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that you spoke to that tipping point. And what came up for me, and I'd love to ask you, is in your sales process, when you're about to do a sale or bring someone on board, is there a hesitation point where you need to give the person a push and say, hey, this is an opportunity for you to work with me and change your life? Because sometimes someone who's an overgiver, I know for myself, was really challenging to give to myself, which included investing in myself with a coach or a therapist to help me move this overgiving block.
Yeah, I think this is where I don't love sales, who does? But this is where my aim with my clients is they get to know me enough either via social media or just through their intuition saying, I have to work with this person. And they're the clients I love the most because they're already tuned in somewhat to what is right for them. Even their intuition shoves them and they're willing to take that risk to listen. So that sales process is really just a discussion of getting to know each other, and then they're, totally convinced by the end of it. So I don't really tend to have to give people that lecture, but what I do is reinforce that, when they come for their first session or whatever, I'm like, good on you for focusing on yourself, or reinforce it even in the sales call, like, good on you for focusing on yourself and putting yourself first in this, because it's like, oh, actually, here's a person that allows me to do that gives me the space to do that. And then, sometimes I think the investing in self comes, it's funny, like sometimes when people will fall off a coaching package and go into a maintenance phase, or they decide to not re-sign up and they kind of need to re-sign up, that's more than when I have that conversation actually often. It's like, well, actually, or they go into maintenance and then they contact me in a crisis and I'm like, well, actually, I feel like you need to be more consistently committing to yourself right now, because this is the biggest transition in your life, or the biggest event of your life, or, maybe they're having a relationship challenge or whatever. And I've actually done some relationship coaching with certain clients so I'm not as expert as you would in John, but, where I see that is just so powerful and so important is that quite often it's that, sometimes things like, oh, do I have permission to spend money on myself with my partner comes into it too, or do I have, what will I lose? Will I lose this partner if I start to put myself first? Am I going to be a bad mother if I start to put myself first? Or father? All of those kind of questions start to come in. So this is where the the family system does really impact on all of this.
Totally. I love that you mentioned like with relationships, and like you said before when you signed up for coming on this podcast, like everything is relationships, and you're spot
Yeah.
on. Like, and what I see is that everybody who's in that therapeutic coaching / energy worker space is dealing with relationships at some level, whether it's like relationships with the
Well, to me,
body.
it's foundational. Like often,
Totally.
even when somebody says to me, I want to improve my business or I want to get healthy or whatever it is they come to me with, quite often when I look at the energy flow, the links are around their relationship. You know, even today, I was like, oh, actually, what the energy showed me was that some of the friendships this person was maintaining was actually affecting the flow in all areas of their life, because they're tuning into drama and dredge type energies that are keeping them. And energy has a way of multiplying in your life. Like if you tolerate that there, it's going to show up over here and over here and over here. And this is how the person that's got like, you know, that bad relationship with somebody who might be a little bit critical starts to have a critical boss, starts to have a, you know,
Totally.
like it starts to show up everywhere, gets abused by the guy as they're driving down the road. It's kind of like when we tolerate some of these energies that don't serve us, and that doesn't mean you need to get rid of the partner, but it may be about learning boundaries. It might be learning how to communicate needs or how to communicate feelings and things like that, which, you know, you would be working with. And sometimes when I have done couples counseling, it's had to be me to go, hey, no, actually you can't do that behavior and expect your relationship to continue.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Sometimes it needs that third person to come in and say, hey, that's not going to work.
No. No, if you roll your eyes at your partner, like that's pretty.
No, that's pretty stand out that you haven't. That's not going to work.
No, that's not really going to work. Yeah. So, you know, but that, you know, that supports the person to then maintain that boundary with their partner. So that's why I think the work you do is incredibly overlapping and important to the work I'm doing.
Agreed.
Because quite often there is a more dominant person in the partnership and somebody who's, and that doesn't mean that the person that is more overgiving doesn't still fight nasty. I'm not saying that they don't.
Totally.
But that at times, yeah, that person will automatically tune into the needs of others, automatically give up what's important to them, and then start to resent it.
Yeah.
Which isn't fair to the partner either.
Exactly.
You know?
So you have a choice to say no. Like
Yes.
if you don't want to say no, then why are you resenting me?
Mm-hmm.
It shows up a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I do see resentment is one of the entry points clients come to me with, like in terms of the predominant emotion they might show up with, because it's just like over time they've not held the boundaries and they're just starting to get more and more annoyed at the other people in their life because of that. And some of that's valid, you know.
Totally.
Sometimes we do attract, when we are overgivers, narcissistic types of personalities. We attract people who do want to take advantage of you, and that is, you know, so some of it's valid, but sometimes it's just because you haven't had the boundary, and the person may be fully capable of receiving the boundary and you don't know until you put it in place.
Totally. I love that you spoke to resentment too. Like for me, there's been a journey with resentment where it's, if I've amassed enough resentment towards a person, does that mean that I want that person in my life? Because resentment can be a learning thing. It's like an injury.
Yes.
It's like, okay, cool. Like this person just keeps on being mean to me and critical to me. I put my boundary down, and now like I don't need that criticism in my life. So it's like, okay, thank you. I don't longer want you in my life.
Isn't it? I mean, there's all of our emotions, I think, are a gift in the sense that discomfort it raises makes us pay attention to something.
Totally.
You know? So if we're paying attention to that, I'm getting a lot of resentment between this friend or this partner. I think that was beautifully expressed around how, well, I then go, wow, do I really want this person in my life? Is the issue that I haven't had boundary, or have I actually set boundaries and they keep ignoring them? So is this, you know, and I'm a chronic overstayer in relationships in the past, you know, staying in bad relationships. So, you know, like I was married, I'm divorced, and, you know, I stayed in another relationship for way too long. And that's, you know, we can be really loyal overgivers, overly loyal.
Totally. Feel that. Yeah.
You know, at the expense of self and the expense of our well-being. And I guess if anybody's listening to this and questioning whether that's them, you know, it's really looking at that balance of is this person a real contribution to my life, or does this relationship cost me more than it gives me? Am I losing confidence and self-love in this? Mm-hmm. You know, because that's too big a cost just to have a relationship.
Yeah, that's great. And how did you, like, for you personally, how did you audit that? Like, how did you become aware of, okay, maybe I have stayed in this relationship too long?
Well, I think it's interesting, you know, if I think about my marriage, the body tells you eventually. You know, I tend to have a very responsive, empathic body in the sense that I'll end up with chronic health issues or pain issues if I'm not listening. So I think my body's a little bit more attuned to that. But even for most people, their body will tell them if something is right for them or something isn't right for them. And learning to tune into that is part of what I teach people.
Beautiful. I'm hoping you were going to say that. So, like,
Yes.
it's in that body attunement. Like, what are the things that you tend to take people through?
So there's a few layers to that. You know, it depends on the level of how connected they are to their body. So some of my clients, particularly the ones with trauma in experience, won't have much of a connection to their body at all. So they need to kind of go back to step one, which is learning how to feel something cleanly without adding a massive amount of story into it. How do I ride the emotional wave, which usually only takes somewhere between 10 and 90 seconds to sit with an unpleasant sensation. And people spend their whole lives avoiding unpleasant situation. In our culture, we're an unpleasant sensation avoiders. That's why we have addiction, you know, and I'm guilty of this at times, you know, sitting there avoiding life by watching Netflix or reaching for the chocolate bar or whatever it is. So, but I'm aware of that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because I've done enough of this work of sitting with my sensations, and it's not a big deal, but I need to teach them how to do that first if they don't have that skill. And then it's tuning into, well, if this body is bringing me awareness, I'm a big believer in getting plugged in, grounded. So, you know, feeling grounded. So we do some grounding things. If somebody's not grounded, if they're too in their head and they're not enough in their body. So we do some grounding. I have a meditation I call soul alignment, where you get grounded and then you connect through the crown chakra to your higher self and soul. And then when we're in that state of connecting to truth and connecting to practical reality, is the way I see it.
Yeah.
Then our body will give us 100% of the time accurate feedback on our yeses and nos. It will absolutely tell us. Like if I said to you, John, is it right for you to go for a run this afternoon? If you tune into your body, yeah, there you are. You will feel a closing or a tension if it's a no. You will feel an opening and a loosening if it's a yes. So it's a lot about teaching that awareness around actually decision making can happen in the body. It doesn't have to happen in the head. And often the head's not a great place to make decisions from, because the head has been programmed from birth to grave by all sorts of influences.
Totally. Lee, I love where this conversation is going. So in your clients' breakthroughs and the magic that they perform, where else, like they might come to you for one problem. How does the solution end up cascading into other areas of their life?
Well, to me, I mean, I guess this is, you know, I studied life coaching, you know, after I'd studied occupational therapy, I studied kinesiology, then I studied life coaching. Life coaching has this little wheel and creates segments for the different areas of their life, and people will work, and so the goals will work on one on the other, but it doesn't work like that. Because like I said, you know, that client I had this morning who I'm like, oh, your friends are keeping you in this energetic flow, which is creating this stagnancy across all areas of her life, including where she wants to go next to in her career. She's not having any inspired thought. I'm like, actually, we need to unhook you from that flow there. And then the creations and the ideas are going to start to drop in for her. So it's hard to know sometimes where the shifts are going to exactly land. I mean, I can intuit where they'll land, but quite often the shifts are really global and everywhere. But sometimes those shifts aren't very comfortable to begin with, John. I mean, if you're letting go of friendships, or you're letting go of a career, or you're letting go even of a partner, that is big stuff. And I'm asking a lot of my clients, and they are stepping forward with courage to step into that space. And that's the attunement of that I have to have as a intuitively how far to challenge somebody, what they're ready for, what the level of change that they're ready for in their life. Because when you do start to make that flip from externally validated to internally validated, your life changes. Now, it is for the better, but it's not always comfortable.
Correct.
like I've lost great, you know, these concepts of lifelong friendships, or this, you know, my relationships even with some family members have shifted in ways where we're not as close anymore. I still love them.
Yeah.
We're not as close, but that's actually for my highest good, and that's protecting me in a sense from, you know, flows that aren't, or judgments or things that aren't. And it's not that I need to avoid life, but I find that my clients will become much more discerning around what energies they want to relate to.
Yeah.
And that's in every area of life. Like, it's this massive generalization, but sometimes I just say to my clients, if you just find the right place and the right people, your life is good.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Like, location and the community makes a huge shift in, if you think of like a cell structure or cell or the body, like anything, when you're in the right area, like if you're in a sauna or if you're standing in smoke, of course you're going to be sick. So if you move out of the smoke or move into nature or move amongst people that are like supporting you and saying, hey, like patting you on the back and going,
well, the difference between somebody who celebrates your growth, you know, when my clients are making these breakthroughs around boundaries, if they've got someone celebrating their growth versus questioning it or judging it or being jealous of it, like the difference in how easy that process is huge. You know?
Do I detect an Australian accent in your voice?
Yes.
All right.
I'm Australian.
Great. So tall poppy wise, are you familiar with
poppy wise? Yeah, I think that's part of our culture, to not celebrate success, and, you know, or to be expressive about it, you know, is even part of our culture. And, you know, that celebration is one thing I started to give to myself before I started to see it externally in my world. So I would get off a session with a client, I realized I wasn't getting validated externally in my own business. This is one of the things about, no one's there going, great job, buddy, you know. So I had to start giving that to myself, right, to keep that and that celebration energy. And then that started showing up in friendships. But I also started to notice the friends that really didn't celebrate my successes. And once you see that, that's really hard to unsee. And it's really hard to feel, for me personally, to go, do I want to be around someone who's not happy for my success?
Yeah, I agree.
Ugly. I think it's really ugly. You know? So I just go, oh, you know, and it took a while to see that with some people, because people, you know, it wasn't obvious always, but then, you know, how if you're an overgiver, you tend to be a great listener, and so sometimes people will redirect the conversation to themselves, or they'll, you know, change the topic. It's not necessarily saying I'm not happy for you, but there are, you know, instances, particularly with a lot of my clients, where people will say negative things to try and cut them down when they're feeling good.
Yeah, it's really what would you say that is, where somebody else just can't be with somebody else's greatness or their celebration?
Well, there's so many different ways I could explain that. I think in terms of jealousy is actually an energy that I don't like to tolerate within myself very long. What its value is recognizing maybe what a desire is of mine. So if I'm jealous of someone, if that comes in, I'm like, oh, okay, that's showing me what I desire. But then I work to let it go. But if somebody allows that energy to grow in their life, they will become abusive, either passively, aggressively, or verbally, because it is actually a very low, I call it low realm, low realm energy, you know. So it's like shaming somebody. It's quite down there in terms of, so when somebody aligns to that, this is a mistake I've made, John, a lot in my life, is that I've tried to teach people who are connecting to a lot of those low realm energies and behaviors. I've tried to be a teacher, and I realized actually I wasn't invited to be their teacher.
Right.
So unless they're really willing to receive feedback, you know, like if you're relationship couple counseling, and is the person listening to the feedback, either from you or from the other client, do they then take action on it? If they don't shift in that and they keep repeating the behavior, then that's one of those situations where I've learned to go, I'm leaving you in that. And I'm walking away from that. I'm not going to try and teach you to be a better person forever and ever and ever and ever to try and get you out of that. I do believe we make choices sometimes sometimes. And sometimes people are in low realm energies or low state energies of no fault of their own because of the abuse or trauma that's happened to them. And so they kind of get stuck in that pattern. So this is where I have this optimistic frame that I think every therapist and coach needs. I believe in people's ability to change.
Yes.
So they come to me, and that's cost me in my relationships. But in my coaching business, great, because they come to me and I'll point out their shadow if it needs to be pointed out. I'll point out where they're doing passive, particularly overgivers will do a lot of passive aggressive behaviors, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not directly asking for their needs, right? So no one's a full victim here. They're perpetrators in that sense too. This is how we relate. But once you've kind of, I guess I think when you point that out, is that an opening? And I try and encourage self-compassion at the same time as that awareness so that they can receive that. And if they receive that awareness, we then have choice. What do you do with that? Like, that is choice. Once I have awareness, what I do with it is totally up to me. Do I shove that because it's more convenient, or am I actually really interested in being in a relationship dynamic, holding power rather than connection and love?
Yeah, totally. That's wow. Power versus connection and love. Totally. I love that distinction that you just created there. Because sometimes like power can feel like it's connection and love, but it's not.
No.
It's like, do you just want to oppress me, or you want to be with me?
Yeah,
I just want connection and love, which is really what I'm looking for when I'm giving to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think relationships, I think the area you're working in is absolutely fascinating to me, because I see a lot of shifts in what people would define as a good relationship, and old models of relationship not working for a lot of people. They still work for some people, those traditional models, but not for everyone. So there's a lot of change in relationships.
Totally. Like
using landscape.
Totally. And that's what I'm loving right now, is like with non-monogamy and monogamy and whatever it is, like whether you want to stay single and you just want to have really close friends, like just the whole landscape change. And that's what I love about like working with people with their relationships, because they can discover who they really are in relationship, right? It's like when they've got that model of, no, I have to get married, I have to do this. Well, you don't. Like what you do, align with your truest self. What's the thing that you want to do next?
Right for you,
Exactly.
And giving full permission to that, that's freedom in that. That is what freedom is in my definition, is being aligned to yourself and giving full permission to that and actually expressing that. Doing that in relationships. But, if somebody's, and part of it is, I don't want people to give up on relationships too early, because part of it is about how you communicate things, as you would know.
Totally.
And sometimes clients will come to me and say, I told him, and I'm like, have you, in the way that he can hear it? I'm not sure.
I love that. I get that too. So it's usually the women that comes to me.
Yeah.
And it's like the partner's doing this, XYZ. We've been together for however many years. And then I end up deep diving into like, well, what's there for you? And it's usually an overcharge of resentment, right? Yes. So then once I can help them move through that resentment and treat me as your partner, and just tell me everything that you want to say to me as if I was your partner. Just get it all out. All the vitriol.
Beautiful.
All of it. Just get it clear, right? And how do you feel now? Oh, I feel so clear. Great. Now, what do you actually want to say to your partner? Yeah, look, I miss our connection. I miss this. I miss doing this with you, right?
Yes.
And you can regenerate the relationship once all that built up resentment's gone. But deep down, like they do love their partner. They love the world that they've committed to.
Yes.
They just need to get rid of that massive bulk of mucky, that low realm energy.
Yes.
Just get rid of it. Okay, cool. Yes. Now what you can create now.
Yeah, vent it in that safe space, journal it, whatever. Yeah.
Totally.
But I think that's really powerful, because it's about getting into that clear space where the other model I might use around this is where you can be in your adult chair, your adult self, your mature, wise self, whatever you want to call it, when you have that conversation, rather than being in your defensiveness, your pain, your passive aggressive, whatever it is, when you have that conversation, so it can land and be heard by the other person, particularly men, because and this is a total stereotype, so forgive me, people, but
it's true. What you're about to say is true. I'm feeling this is true. What you're about to say. So
men often don't get flooded by emotion. And so when emotion comes in, they'll just shut. And you know, this is where women get judged as being irrational, over emotional, too sensitive. And sometimes that's about training the guy to get more able to receive that, which is an important part. But it's also about, for the woman, can she bring just it very clearly, I'm feeling this and I need this.
Totally.
Because then he goes, okay, well, that's something I can do. I can succeed at that. And he needs to succeed to feel like the relationship's worth fighting for.
Exactly. Right? Wanted, needed. Am I useful in this relationship?
Yeah.
Like, am I contributing at all to this?
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah, so that concept, but if it's too much emotion and unclarity, he doesn't have any definition around what he needs to do, a good guy will want to make her happy as long as it doesn't cost him something essential like his purpose.
Totally. I love that you mentioned purpose, because like for me in my relationships, when I was like a traumatized man, me not having a purpose, really, I was lost. So whenever I felt like I needed to do something that was for me, I didn't know. Like I was trapped in this cycle of, yeah, I've got a 9-to-5 job. That feels like it's okay for me, but I was miserable. Deep down, I was miserable. And then when my partner would talk to me, I would just vacate my body. Like my eyes, I've mentioned this before to other people, my eyes would like drift apart. Like she would say, John, your eyes are drifting apart. She'll be telling me this deep emotional stuff, like what she's struggling with. And my eyes are just like going apart. And
yeah,
I'm just
man that's lost
fantasizing.
his purpose is really, often unavailable in the relationship. Or reverts to childlike behavior and she ends up mothering him.
Yeah.
You know?
Same. Yeah, exactly. Like, John, are you okay? Something's wrong?
Yeah,
sure. Mother me. Yes. It's now
so at least it's a little bit comfortable, right? And you know, and actually what he probably needs is discomfort of the fact he's not on purpose.
Exactly.
That's onto that.
Yeah, that's suffering. And that discomfort and suffering, like when you said before, like leaving people to be with where they're at, like just allowing them to suffer in that space of, okay, I don't want to
really hard for us, Karen.
Really hard.
It's like, it's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to learn actually in this journey. It's just like, can I leave them in their shit and really just leave them there? And because I know that even though the person is a good person at heart, they're still making choices. And I have to honor that and respect that. And they haven't invited me to teach them. This is a great thing about being the job we are. We get invited to teach, invited to coach, invited. It's lovely for me because I'm, the part of me that loves to do that gets the channel that. And that's good for me as long as to have this recognition that in my relationships, I don't do that unless it's invited, unless it's appropriate, unless it's right, unless my intuition says you just need to deliver something right now.
Yeah, totally. Same. Exactly the same. Like with my partner, I'll be like Cassie is her name. Cassie, I've got something for you. Like, do you want to hear it? Or there's sometimes they'll be like, no, I need to speak into this right now. Otherwise, holding myself back and going, I don't need to coach my partner. Let her make her own decisions and her own mistakes and her own celebrations, whatever it is. I don't need to be involved in everything. No. Being able to take that step back has been a journey for me too, because I have had relationships where I become like this, like a therapist, like a guru type in the relationship. I don't want that. No. Like it boosts my ego, but ultimately the relationship dissolves because I get put on a pedestal. And so, well, that's not what I want.
I've done the opposite, interesting, John. I've found men that won't listen to me at all, so that I don't have to play that role. But then I get frustrated when they don't listen when it counts, right?
Great, Lee.
Crazy? Us human beings?
We are the cosmic joke. Like, and when you learn the humor, like about what it means to be human, it makes life so much easier.
It does make life easier. And I like to bring that humor because that's part of the self-compassion. Like, I do have a percentage of clients that have what schema therapy would call unrelenting standards. So they're high on the perfectionism, high on detail, high on standards. And for some of those clients, they give themselves a really hard time when they're not there yet.
Yes.
And so we have to go, you know what, you're human. Like, hey, I'm not Jesus yet. Are you Jesus yet? Like, I'm not this perfectly loving person, wise person all the time. And we have a lot of parts. I like to do work with parts in terms of, you know, we have parts of us that are that want this or behave in other parts that, so we have conflict around parts, and sometimes the unresourceful parts are driving the bus. Yes. So it's awareness of that, but it's not that you're wrong. It's just that this part, which thinks it's trying to help you, it actually thinks it's trying to help you.
Yeah.
Doing so quite maladaptively, you know, like it might be like whatever the behavior is, right?
Yeah, so, I love that. And in the body, it really feels like, now this thing's going to help me. But then deep down, like a week's time, it's like, why did I listen to that part?
Yes. And you know, that for whatever that is for the client, that might be like they avoid and run away, or they, don't speak up, or they speak too much. Whatever behavior is driven from that unresourceful part, the part wants to keep them safe or protect them in some way. It wants to serve them in some way. So I do a lot of work with that side of things, of the parts of people.
That's
and
beautiful.
It just allows us softness and gentleness too, because we can go, well, part of me is totally effing pissed off at him.
Totally.
And another part of me is like totally understanding of the fact that he wants space or whatever it is.
Yes.
You know,
the parts are super gentle. I love that, because you can create that distance from, cool, like it's me and it isn't me.
Yes.
Like, cool, that's a behavior over there. Oh, well, I've never noticed that before. Like, that thing's actually.
And it brings curiosity, and that's what I love about your energy just there. It was like, oh, I've got a curiosity about investigating this, rather than shaming it, making it wrong, making myself wrong,
pathologizing
it, and internally shaming self. Like that's, you know, there's some of the clients I see most stuck are the ones that really work a lot of internal criticism and shame and has constantly through their life. So we work with that, because that's a pretty common pattern too.
It is. Yeah, there's been a few clients that have come to me, like, and I ask them, where have you just come from? Like, have you come from another therapy? Have you come from something else? And there's back-to-backing, like all these different therapies. And I'm like, when was the longest time you've ever taken a break of like just being able to listen to what's actually going on for you? And they're like, oh, it's been at least a few years now. And I'm like, okay, cool. You need to stop for a minute, and you're great where you are right now, and just take like a year's break. If you get stuck, just message me. But in the meantime, just be able to celebrate that you've come a long way.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong that needs to, like a grease and oil change or a change
your tire. You don't need fixing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think, so there's people that are massive overworkers, you know, and sometimes I'll sit there and like you, and I'll go, well, actually, there's nothing really wrong here. There's nothing really, I mean, we can tweak.
Totally tweak. Yeah.
You know, but really, it's just in that sense of, and we can tweak the energy, but quite often it is about that. It's about the part of them perceives that there's something wrong, when actually, where's the celebration? Where's the enjoyment, the presence, the fun, the play, the lightness?
Totally. Yeah, I was in a group workshop last year, and whoever was leading it, we were doing a process together, and she was a woman that was just up to things, right? She was creating all these kinds of projects and working with people. She was designing like polyamorous relationship communities where they could accept like polyamory. And I said to her, hey, when did you celebrate your last achievement? When did you actually, what is your celebration technique? Like, how do you celebrate? And when have you celebrated last? And it dawned on her that she's been spending this lifetime of achievement, never stopped, and actually gone, wow. Like looking back down the timeline of her life and gone, oh my goodness, I've not celebrated what I've created.
And, you know, but I see this as the same group of patterns that I work with, because here we have like why haven't they celebrated, and why they keep going for further? It's like I'm seeking that external validation. I'm seeking that somebody to say you are good enough.
Yeah,
and for that to actually finally land, when that's an internal job, you know, like that is not something I should outsource.
Totally.
You know, and I'm good enough even if I haven't achieved that dream or that goal or that, you know, that thing that I'm working towards constantly, or if I, you know, haven't lost the 5 kilos yet, or I haven't, whatever it is. You know, just, and I think there's sometimes too, just even acceptance in, and I think this is where coaching and counseling helps really a lot, is to go, okay, I know you want to change all of that about your life, but let's just focus on one thing first.
Yeah.
So let's park the losing the 5 kilos and let's not shame you about that because we're not even working on that. You're not even choosing to work on that right now. What are you actually focusing on for the next 6 months or the next 3 months? And then when you have more capacity, because your capacity grows as your nervous system becomes more settled. And it grows sometimes with practice, like you handle the new responsibility that you acclimatize and habituate to that. So as capacity grows, and sometimes capacity can shrink. So some of my clients come to me in grief. I've got a whole run of, a client refers a client, a client refers a client.
Yeah.
I got a run of clients who had lost their partners unexpectedly as young widows, right? For a young widow group.
Wow.
Fascinating group of people because quite often when you're a young person losing a partner, it's a total shock. And that grief is so deep and so profound. So a lot of my messaging for people like that is just accept that you don't actually have capacity right now. It's normal to not have capacity to be taking on all of this stuff and then blaming yourself because you're not when you don't, because you're in grief, and that is normal. Same thing with illness or, massive life transitions like when I got divorced. Capacity reduces at that time. And if you judge yourself because you're not sticking to your diet or whatever it is, or being 110% at work when you were probably overworking before, you just bring it back to a normal level.
Or comparing yourself to somebody on Instagram or social media.
Yes. The comparisonitis is a massive one. It's like, and I had to let go of that one. I think being such an empath, I've never really had a huge amount of energy to be able to go and do things. I'm quite feminine as well, so I don't have a lot of masculine drive and push. It just accepting that in myself and looking at other people and what they're able to create. I just celebrate that for them now. I'm like, that's so great you can do that, and I'm loving that I can't, and that's okay too.
That's beautiful. Lee. I love that.
And at one point when my capacity, I'm a single parent, so what I've recognized is my capacity's grown as my kids gotten older.
Right.
So now it's like I can bring more into my business now, or I can, add more in terms of connecting to friends or hobbies or looking after myself, from a diet or exercise standpoint. So as my capacity grows, I can bring more of that in. So sometimes with my clients, it is about building that capacity, because if their nervous system is chronically stressed, then there's things we can do about that.
Yeah, totally.
So we can build capacity. But for other clients, it's just the recognition. Can you just accept that this is where your capacity is at?
Yeah. I think, and that validation of just, and that check of like, hey, just be with what you've got right now. Like they're trying to expand capacity is going to make you unwell. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be confused.
Yes.
Just be with the grief.
Well, as soon as I add too much on my plate, something, falls off or doesn't
totally
work, or like what I found myself is if I do too much in my business at once, nothing gets finished.
I hear that too. I've got a post-it notes wall over there of all the things that I want to do.
So it's endless, isn't it?
It's endless because people that are like overgivers, I think they can just see solutions to everything.
Yes.
Right? There's a solution. I see that problem, solution, and it's you can be really solutions focused. However, trying to implement that for me is like, well, what actually aligns to my business? What can I outsource to somebody else?
Yes.
Or do I need to do the thing? Do I need to do the thing?
They're all really good questions for business owners right now. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And is this going to serve my highest purpose? Is this going to add to my value of my family, my health? Because in that overgiving phase, I just want to help everybody. I'm like, yeah, cool. I see this how relationships play out in the family dynamic, then the work dynamic, and then systems, and then government, and then like politics, and then the world at large. So I want to fix it all. I want to help fix it all. But then, well, what do I actually want, mate? How do I want to live?
And can you have value still if you don't change the world?
Exactly.
Like that was a really massive shift for me, was to release this obligation to change the world sort of feeling and just unhook from that and go, actually there's so much more spaciousness, because now I can just do what I want to do rather than have to save the world. That's part of the overgiving, right? It's part
I love that. I love that you touched on that, and also trying to save it in my lifetime. It's like, cool, like consciousness is going to evolve as it needs to evolve. I'm in this body doing this thing. Can I also enjoy this body and fulfill what my purpose is is without trying to overgive and save everyone.
Yes. And, trusting that it doesn't just have to be you. I recognize my own ego in that, thinking it was just me that could change this when heaps of other people are teaching similar but different, or consciousness, like you said, I do believe it is upgrading. There is new consciousness and upgrading happening on an energetic level.
Yes.
So that's going to happen.
Totally.
I don't need to.
Exactly. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Which always puts me
it's bigger than me.
It's bigger than, yeah, totally. Which always puts me in the paradox of, well, if I didn't do anything, would it still be evolving, and does that matter? I was like, if I just stopped and slept.
It's an interesting paradox. I've been in that one too. But then I go, well, okay, great. Well, maybe it doesn't matter, but would you still choose this anyway? I have so much fun, as I'm sure you do. I can see it in my sessions. And particularly when the client's aligned, that, when you've got that, when a client of mine who is in business left this morning, we were talking about this because we're talking about his business and where it's grown to astronomical, because he comes just for the energy side of things, and alignment, and all we work on is alignment. And he's like, and he's been amazing at this. He's taught me. He's just kept toning his ideal client. He's kept going, what's in alignment for me in my business? He's kept that focus has been so incredible that, now in his business, it's really all joyous. And that's the same thing I experience, because it's big and increasingly so, that the clients are listening to my message, they're aligning with that, they feel connected to it, they come to me, and allowing that energy magic of that person being attracted to me means I don't have to really, when we're going back full circle I don't really have to push a sale. It's just a conversation.
Yeah,
it's an alignment thing. And if they don't recognize or see value in what I offer, great. Next, somebody else will.
Yeah, somebody else will. Totally. I'm not getting attached to, I can't give to you. Wait. Maybe I can give you something else. Wait. Okay, cool. I
used to take that personally. I used to take it personally if somebody didn't really receive the way I work. And now I know it's not personal anymore.
Yeah.
While I still do the auditing around, could I have done that session better? How could I have explained that differently? I still do that, but I also then go, well, okay. And there's not a lot of my clients that leave, actually. That sense of, if it does happen where somebody drops off, or I see them, they're working with somebody else, I used to feel that personally, but now I'm like, oh, okay, great. There's the analogy I use is with a lot of my clients is, you're choosing ice cream. There's 26 flavors.
Totally.
Sometimes I love mint choc chip, John, but you might hate mint choc chip. That's okay.
Totally. Yeah. I'm a strawberry or vanilla or triple choc.
You're a triple choc. Okay. Just load up the chocolate.
Load up the chocolate.
I'm a bit of a load up the chocolate girl too. But the reality is that it is about that match. And when it's right, whether that's a partnership or a workplace or a friendship or a coach, there will be a recognition of who you are and the value you bring.
I love that. Lee, what's your vision? What's your vision for the world? If you could have one.
Oh, if I could have one, it would just be that everyone attunes to what's right for them.
Yeah.
And if they did that, then we, and is able to express it and share it, of course, then if they did that, then we wouldn't have all of these patterns I've been talking about today.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I love that vision. If everyone
could
just attune.
Simple.
Yes, so simple.
Just
be yourself.
Just be yourself. Just attune to what's right for you. Listen to that, which requires listening to your intuition. It requires connecting to your higher self. So it is more complicated than that, because I do see a lot of people disconnected from those higher aspects of self. Well, I don't see them, but in the world they are.
Yeah, I guess, and for me, it's been, I needed somebody else to help me attune to that.
Yes.
So it didn't matter how many meditation books I read or whatever it was, or how many YouTube videos.
So did that come from your mentor?
Yeah, it did. My multiples of mentors. So there've been different, like when you're seeing that the low energy, the low vibration, I started at a certain level of mentor, and then I'd get ones that were really high, be able to connect quite highly spiritually, but then had low level bodily stuff going on. So it's been this attunement of, okay, cool, this person's living this kind of life, but then they're not quite integrity over here about who I want to be. So I've just been matching all of my mentors over the years to try and find that match of, this is the most, using all of those technologies, this is the most attunement that I can have right now. Even just talking to you, I can feel even more attunement. So just in speaking with people and learning from other people's learnings, I'm like, yeah, there's
look,
even
I'm
more
the same,
attunement.
John. You know, my current mentor I've been with for about 2 years, has brought me more in connection to myself.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's done that through the process of identifying energetically where I'm not, where there might be false beliefs, but also just in terms of that constant reminder that that is I believe my purpose is just really to connect to knowing and elevate. And if I put that at the highest value for myself, everything comes out of that. So that, you know, I definitely relate to, yes, sometimes people need, particularly initially, and a good mentor will also then teach you how to connect yourself.
Yes, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, if they're just holding all the knowing themselves and not showing you how to connect to that, then there's an ego stuff involved in my mind in that.
Yeah.
But, you know, they should do both. Like, yes, the clients come to me because I'm seeing things they can't, essentially, you know, as one way of putting it. And absolutely, then they are kind of, in a sense, dependent on my awareness and my knowing to be connected to their own. But then over time, my goal is I need to be teaching them how to connect to that truth themselves. That teach a man to fish kind of thing.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. Like for me, it's the same thing where I need someone to look at my blind spots and actively point them out. And then me having the humility to go, okay, cool, I'll fall on that sword. Yep, you know what? That's a huge blind spot. What else? What is behind that blind spot, right? And then for clients as well, it's me giving them access to, you have exactly what I have and you can do it too. You just have the discipline to do it as well. Like whatever your routines are to connect into that highest self and highest alignment, right?
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, if it's different for different people. And that's where the more intuitive a coach or mentor you've got, the better. Yes. In the sense that people try and apply generic advice to everyone. And that does my head in. I see it all over social media. And I'm like, you know what? That everybody has a different flow, has a different way of connecting, has a different way of making decisions within their body, has a different, you know, so when I'm tuning into my client, it's specific to them. It's not, and I can still do group programs and have success with that because I'm picking up on generally what that is, but there is still, and there always will be more power in the one-to-one.
Exactly. I agree. Yeah, I agree. That's for me why I charge a premium for my one-to-ones, because they get like me in that space where I attune you to who you are, and it's every person's unique. Like sometimes it'll be purely taking them through bodywork stuff or like oracle card stuff or random things. Everybody is so unique. I'm like, okay, I can't. There's no cookie cutter for this individual that's in front of me. It's their life story is their life story, which means their intuitive nature is their own intuitive nature.
And how a message is going to land changes too, right? Yeah. So, you know, and this is the value of being kind of like that over functioning, over studying in the past, is that you draw upon all that like stuff you studied, all the multiple courses, and you kind of discard a lot of it and then just cherry pick from little pieces. But sometimes I found myself doing a process I hadn't done in 10 years the other day with a client, because just intuitively it's like, this is right for this person.
Yeah,
that's all. I was like, you know, that's kind of that's fun in the sense too, just to have the variety, because I have a high need for variety. Like I couldn't take somebody through the same process every time. I'd be bored.
I had a mentor that told me once, like, don't be a tool. Like, don't just become the tool that you feel like, oh, I've got to use this technique right now. It's like, no, listen to the person. What do they actually need right now? And it could just be a listening ear.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I love this.
I mean, so, you know, that attunement to what they need, I think that's what empaths overgivers do naturally.
Yeah.
That's where the strength of that is. And that's why I feel like those patterns were the training ground. And then I had to release them, you know, in terms of the overgiving aspect of self. I still have the energetic ability to, now I can sit with somebody and feel what's happening for them quite often.
Yeah.
So that high level of attunement, mirror neurons, you know,
totally.
High level of empathy. Sometimes I'll sit there and I'll go, is your knee sore?
Yeah.
I'm like, my knee's sore.
I totally
it's kind of like, so that, and that level of that's where I think when you're talking about, that's why I wouldn't consider a coach that's non-intuitive. Like to me, anything cookie cutter or coming from how they did it, if it doesn't apply to me, is not going to cut it.
Great. Yeah, I really hear you're attuned to that.
I mean, unless I'm going strictly for a how, like my intuition says, you need to learn Facebook marketing, go and learn that how from whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like
totally.
So then I can sit there and absorb a how, but I'm probably unlikely to sit through a full course because I'm just going to grab what I need. And
totally. Yeah, because I've got clients that refuse to do group. I'm like, yeah, cool. I get it. Like you just want one-on-one. I understand. Like if you don't feel groups for you,
yeah. I like both. For myself personally, right now I'm in both. It's changed, but one-to-one is essential for me. Like I just don't feel that I could be where I was today without my one-on-one mentor.
Same. Yeah, having that consistency with someone that knows me, knows my story, and can go, hey, John, that's the same pattern that you had last month or the month before. Do you want to change it now? And I'm like, yeah, this one's really like tripping me up. Let's sort it out.
Yeah. And just even that history, like I will know after a while of working with somebody, their childhood wounds or what their mother was like, or and I hear them say something like, oh, that sounds like your mother right now. Is that
totally
does that belong to you? So I'm I can go faster and quicker into what the stuff is because I know them. Absolutely. Even though my intuition is pretty good at getting there quickly, I feel like just and look, it's a wonderful relationship between a mentor and a client one-to-one. It is a deeply intimate space, and for some of my clients it is the most intimate relationship they've ever had, from the sense of telling somebody truly what is happening internally for them, truly what's happening in their mind. And I don't take that for granted. I hold secrets of people that they haven't told anybody in their whole life. And I think it's a position of privilege. It's a position of privilege. And I remind myself that, because profound conversations are so common to you and I.
They are.
Like, it's the land we live. It's actually our job. We have profound conversation every day. Most people go around just having normal conversations with the odd smatter of profound.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought about it that way, but yeah, you're right. Like every day, like I've had at least 4 or 5 conversations today where this is profound.
Yes.
Like, wow, this is
deep. This is deep. This is profound. This is amazing. This is magical. This is like, wow, to be immersed in that all the time. And I used to almost feel like a fish out of water, because I'd be like, I'm just not interested in talking about whatever,
the weather,
getting Botox or getting all the superficial things people talk about. I'm not interested in talking about that. Oh, there must be something wrong with me. No, actually, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm in this really, I'm talking about things that matter every day.
Lee, I think that's a perfect point to end on.
Yes.
If everybody wants to talk to you or work with you, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, they can look. Facebook's probably the easiest because I'm there. So that's Lee Rourke. I'm at. So my spelling, it's easy to find me because the spelling of me is unusual. Leighrourke. R-O-R-K-E. So no you. And I have a website too, but I've just switched websites. It's pretty rudimentary, but it's there and it's got all my contact details. So I'm adding some new things to that in the next few months. So I have a circle coming up for overgivers, for women overgivers, a max of 9 people. It'll probably start in about May, and basically it's fortnightly evening sessions, and we go deep into those patterns. So that's how I like to do group work, is small group.
Great.
Because it creates that safety that, we get everyone to agree to confidentiality and to non-judgment and to owning your triggers in the process if anybody triggers you. So there's a safety in that, and there's also, I can tune into individual energies in that too.
Beautiful.
Sometimes it's global, the issues, like all 9 people will have it.
Yeah.
Sometimes 5 or 6 will have it. Sometimes 1 or 2 will have it. So I speak to the issues we all have, but then sometimes it's like, oh, okay, this is for you. And I get a knowing, okay, that's for that person. I need to deliver that. I need to take 20 seconds to deliver the awareness. And then we can kind of come back to the group. But that small amount allows that. I haven't done bigger groups, so I'm not saying I won't. But I think if you do bigger groups, you're going for more of the global patterns rather than the individual stuff.
Beautiful. I can see you do big groups, Lee.
Yeah, well, why not? Like, I'm just really open because, like I said, it doesn't all have to happen today or tomorrow. Totally. And as I build my capacity, and I don't need to save the world. So we just keep kind of going with what the next level is, and where my intuition and my higher self direct me, my soul directs me, that's where I'll go, because that has never let me down.
Thank you, Lee. Well, thank you for trusting your soul and your higher self for joining me today. I really appreciate that.
Yes. Oh, thank you for inviting me. What a delightful conversation. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Lee.